Our forces have urgently infiltrated Russia and caused utter devastation. Next-generation weapons are on the front line. The Russians' brilliant tactics have cracked like rotten plywood. Putin has started hunting men abroad. Near Pokrovsk, the occupiers were blown apart by our mines. The assault was thwarted, and drones struck for dessert. All this in our episode of Hell Point. A real partisan invasion is terrorizing the Russians. All of the Kremlin's plans are leaking, with our own people among strangers. Putin's army is facing problems, and the defense industry has started to suffocate. Exquisite work. It's all them. Putin clenches his fists, but it's in vain. The countdown has already begun. How has the partisan underground already managed to cause trouble for Russia? And when will it play its joker? The answers to these questions are in our report right now.
They cut off communications not only for military facilities but also for other sites, like in Saratov, the Moscow region, or Dagestan. They also destroy vehicles belonging to Russian soldiers and officers and conduct reconnaissance of Russian manufacturing sites. Recently, agents of the Atesh movement reported that they had conducted reconnaissance of the Russian enterprise Radar MMS in St. Petersburg. This company works for the enemy's military-industrial complex, in particular producing technologies for missiles. They also track the movement of Russian equipment and troops deep within the rear of the aggressor country.
This disrupts the enemy's plans, both in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine and far beyond its borders. So because what we find out, what the enemy is planning to do, and as I already mentioned, we try to thwart these plans.
All the information obtained is promptly passed on to the defense forces of Ukraine. And to make this possible, they often have to become insiders among strangers.
They don't just carry out partisan work behind enemy lines. They either enlisted in the Russian army or joined local government bodies. So by and large, the Russians perceive them as their own, and in fact that's why they don't restrict their access to information.
The partisan movement in Ukraine emerged back in 2014, when the Russians first entered Ukrainian territory. Our people were searching for and transmitting information in the temporarily occupied territories. With the full-scale invasion, the number of partisans increased, as did the area in which they operate. In particular, there are now almost no safe places left on the territory of the Russian Federation.
The resistance movement, which is subordinate to the Special Operations Forces, has matured. It has become more experienced. It has become more aggressive, which is a good thing. And in fact, it has expanded its capabilities, as I already mentioned, even into the territory of the Russian Federation. And this also helps the relevant agencies, our special services, to eliminate, for example, the well-known occupiers who are, among other things, involved in, for instance, missile strikes.
In addition, explosions at military facilities in Russia, including weapons manufacturing sites, command posts, or depots, are also made possible thanks to the resistance movement. And our underground has to operate with extreme caution. Every operation is prepared in advance, taking into account all the difficulties and nuances. Everything is classified as secret, because the Russians are searching for members of the resistance movement, which means every operation is a risk to life.
They are trying to identify these people. That's why we always conduct briefings and all possible trainings on how to avoid such troubles. These are actually planned operations that are coordinated and carried out by many people. In other words, this is powerful work that, in fact, almost always ends successfully.
And in addition to the moral pressure on the top leadership of the Russian Federation and the occupying army, this significantly impacts the military potential of the Russians. In particular, strikes on production facilities or warehouses reduce the number of missiles and drones that will be used to attack Ukraine. Fires on the railways create problems for delivering ammunition and equipment to the front. Most partisan operations behind enemy lines are not disclosed today for the safety of the people who are helping Ukraine. Very often these are civilian Ukrainians or citizens of other countries who independently offer their help in enemy territory. Vladislav Palivoda, We Are Ukraine, Marathon, United News.
For even more high-profile events from the life of Ukraine and the world, read the Telegram channel Times of Ukraine. Only the latest news and verified information. See the link in the description below the video. Something strange was spotted in the sky. These balloons are now haunting the enemy. The intelligence service turned up the heat. Aerostats are bursting onto the battlefield, confusing the enemy and pitting Russian mercenaries against each other. They are the eyes of our air defense and a nighttime nightmare for Putin's army. Shahids are hovering in the air. Enemy drone operators are hitting the SOS buttons. What can the latest UAVs of the armed forces do, and how will they surprise on the front lines? We'll tell you about it in just a moment.
The guys are spreading a protective blanket on the ground.
Yes, to protect it so it doesn't get pierced.
Then they take something out of the case that looks like a giant rubber mattress and start inflating it.
This is a preparatory process. It's usually done in a safe place, meaning somewhere at the base, or it's prepared and inflated before heading out.
In reality, this is an aerostat, a balloon that is filled with helium to provide communications from above.
In this case, it's a 12 cubic meter aerostat, meaning 12 cubic meters of helium. Roughly speaking, you need to fill it with two 40-liter cylinders. They use it to lift various communication relays, FTV relays, cameras, and any equipment that requires an extended radio horizon or view from above.
Assembling such a device is very simple and quick, Igor shares. In frontline conditions, the soldiers bring it to their positions, already assembled.
Before the mission, the guys place the already inflated aerostat in a trailer and deploy it in about 5 minutes. The aerostat is ready for launch.
Communication is extremely important for our defenders in the combat zone. Without it, it is impossible to carry out operations. Thanks to such an aerostat, strike, reconnaissance and ground drones are able to operate at much greater distances, as well as detect enemy command posts in locations that cannot be reached on foot.
This reduces their problems with establishing communication. That is, it also increases the range of the connection itself, and FPV communication as well. Additional equipment is needed there, but it also works much better.
Such a balloon is capable of lifting up to 6 kilograms of payload to an altitude of 500 meters. As a result, the aerostat provides communication for the military at distances of up to 100 kilometers. Moreover, the device can stay in the air for several days.
The aerostat can hover in the air for 3 days without needing to be refilled. After 3 days, it needs to be brought down to refill the gas that has escaped through the envelope, about 1 to 2%, depending on the weather. We top it up and then launch it back into the sky. And it keeps working.
The only thing that limits us is the battery installed on the equipment. If the battery lasts for 12 hours, it will stay up for 12 hours. After that, it needs to be brought down to replace the battery.
If someone thinks that such a bullet is easy to shoot down from a conventional small arms weapon, this is not at all true. Even if someone does manage to puncture the aerostat, the payload will most likely, survive.
The advantage is that it doesn't fall like a stone.
The developers say that in strong winds, it's better to bring the aerostat down to the ground so it doesn't suddenly get blown away to a neighboring country. However, even here, everything has been thought through, down to the smallest detail.
There is an emergency landing system in case it breaks free. It either activates automatically or can be triggered by pressing a special button. There are also weather condition limitations. Usually, all global manufacturers specify a limit of 15 meters per second. That's the operational wind speed. 30 is already the threshold for detachment, but the guys have used it even in 20 and 22 meters per second when the mission had to be accomplished.
Helium-filled aerial systems have become an important element on the front lines, especially given the widespread use of drones. Ihor says their company has deployed dozens of aerostats in the combat zone. They are equipped with antennas, radio repeaters, and more. Engineers are planning to mount interceptor drones on the aerostats. This will make it possible to detect and intercept enemy Shaheds at their flight altitude, which will reduce response time.
It's still too early to talk about these projects because they are still in the development stage. It is possible to install special equipment that will track them.
Quite often, enemy kamikaze drones approach their targets unnoticed. Radars simply do not see them. Aerostats could become the eyes of air defense forces. Aviation expert Konstantin Krivolap is convinced.
In order to detect everything that is flying toward us onto our territory, to identify it, process it, and assign targets and tasks, you need to have radars at a high altitude, not 20,000 kilometers up, but at least 400 or 500 meters. Previously, a radar station was this huge contraption spinning and rotating around. Well, you probably couldn't attach something like that to an aerostat, but modern systems show active phased array antennas, grids based on more hafnium nitride. Yes.
The Pentagon has been using balloons in military operations for a long time. In the early 2000s, the U.S. Department of Defense launched and deployed aerostats over Iraq and Afghanistan, equipped with payloads for reconnaissance. And last year, Poland signed a contract to purchase 4 American Barbara reconnaissance aerostats to monitor its borders with Russia and Belarus. The Ministry of Defense of the Republic claims that such devices are capable of detecting missiles, aircraft, drones, and watercraft within a radius of over 300 kilometers.
With full equipment or complete maintenance, service, software, workstations, and so on. Thanks to this system, they have complete control over the airspace and can then transmit all this information to the same Patriot complexes and other systems.
The Poles paid nearly $1 billion for 4 American aerostats. Ukraine could also deploy such devices along the border or on the outskirts of cities, which would detect enemy targets from 100 kilometers away. Moreover, they will know them. They are domestically produced and several times cheaper. Mikhailo Maneliuk, Vitaly Kovalenko, Podrobici, Inter-TV channel, United News Marathon.
All the Russian foot bikers were wiped out. They thought they had outsmarted the enemy, but instead ran into a barrage of fire from the Ukrainian military. 50 occupiers gone without a trace. Buggies and ATVs couldn't save them. The fierce revenge of the armed forces of Ukraine catches up even with the fastest cowards. The new tactics of the enemy generals have failed. These scenes of grand humiliation for Putin's arrogant soldiers are already being discussed online. Watch this unique, shocking video right now.
In these shots, the occupiers are arriving at combat positions on motorcycles and buggies. This is a relatively new but already widespread enemy tactic, our defenders say. In this way, the enemy tries to gain an advantage in speed and maneuverability, confuse drone operators and increase the expenditure of weapons.
When 30 or 20 men arrive in a single vehicle, we destroy that one vehicle and immediately take out, say, 30 men at once. That is, whoever managed to scatter, we finish them off and that's it. But when they come in 1 or 2 at a time on motorcycles and they ride in these sort of columns, well, not really columns, sometimes it's 5 or 6 motorcycles at once, they scatter. So in one sortie you might be able to destroy one vehicle, right? But by the time you reload, the others have already scattered into the tree lines. That's their, well, the enemy's ingenuity, they make use of that. That's a priority.
A fighter from the Heavenly Retribution Unmanned Systems Battalion of the 54th Separate Mechanized Brigade, which is currently operating in the Donetsk region, shares how to stop enemy assaults. Before the war, the man was a lawyer. After the start of the full-scale invasion, he joined the armed forces of Ukraine. He operated vampire night drones. Now he mainly works with FPV drones.
You basically prepare each drone individually. For yourself, you flash it, set it up, so it can fly. There's a ton of pre-flight work. Then you actually fly it yourself. That is, during the day, you see everything, as they say, from a first-person perspective. That is, when you fly up to the enemy, to some piece of equipment, you see everything. Well, if the video is good, not glitching, no interference, then you can even see their last looks. And that's, well, pretty cool.
Our interviewee does not hide the fact that the enemy currently has the advantage both in terms of equipment and the number of soldiers. In such conditions, holding positions is only possible through the effective work of drone operators.
During one of the recent assaults, when I was at the position, not a single enemy landing party, there were about 50 or 60 of them who landed, came in, left. I counted around 50 to 60 people in our direction. No, we eliminated all 50 or 60 of them, and the infantry didn't fire a single shot from small man arms. That is, we simply didn't let them get close to our infantry. The infantry didn't even have to reach for their rifles.
The soldier says the footage we see in news reports, enemy equipment exploding, fighters destroying enemy headquarters and ammunition depots, is actually the result of careful planning and the high-quality work of usually several drone operator crews. And if there aren't enough strike kits, some missions may end up not being completed at all.
Unfortunately, FPV kamikaze drones have their priorities. Yes, we're more maneuverable, but compared to night drones, we have some drawbacks. But we can't carry as much explosive payload. It's about 1 kilo to 1.5 kilos, and 1 kilo or 1.5 kilos isn't enough to destroy equipment. Even if it's a shaped charge, you still need to finish it off with another hit or two. You understand that if you have, say, 20 or 30 of them at your position, you try not to fly out for non-priority targets. If you already have, say, 30 or 40 at your position, you realize that you can use about 10 drones to, dig out some foxhole with pilots or infantry or destroy some enemy equipment.
The BRO fighter emphasizes the effectiveness of the Ukrainian army's operations directly depends on the quantity and quality of equipment and drones, and there is always a need for them, though at the front. Veronika Vidmetska, Podrobici, Inter-TV channel, Marathon, United.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
News.
Africans, Indians, Nepalis, Chinese, Colombians, Koreans. And that's far from the full diversity of the Russian army. Putin is gathering soldiers for his powerful army almost by putting out classified ads. International recruiting for the slaughter. That's the only way they plug the gaps at the front. The Russians are exhausted. Has Putin really started hunting for men all over the world now? We'll go into more detail about this in our report.
They come from Asia. Well.
Boom, 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 boom.
And from distant Africa.
Tell me again, where did you come from? Senegal. Senegal, yes.
There are also those who were born nearby, but now fight against Ukraine for money.
Where are you from?
Vitebsk.
Belarus, right?
Yes.
And what did they pay you? What did they pay? What did they promise?
200.
200,000.
200.
I see. And did you get the 200,000?
I got it.
The Russians are actively recruiting mercenaries for their war of aggression.
As of this spring, we can say that there are about 48, as of today, let's say about 50 to be more precise, countries around the world from which mercenaries have come to fight as part of the Russian Federation against Ukraine.
Among them are not only Russian allies, CSTO countries, and former members of the Soviet Union. They are looking for mercenaries everywhere, even in the most remote corners of the world.
We know about residents from African countries. Various ones. It's hard for me to say whether there are more from Congo or, say, Mali. We just say Africans. We know about Nepalese, Indians. Recently, we've seen Chinese, we've seen Colombians, Cubans, residents of Latin American countries.
And they're also not opposed to involving citizens from those countries they consider hostile in the war.
We've even seen Americans and various others. We've seen Europeans too. And of course, we're talking about dozens of people, not hundreds or thousands, dozens, but, that's quite a telling fact.
They lure foreigners in the same way as always, with blood-soaked rubles and grand promises.
These are people who, first and foremost, are trying to solve their own financial problems, although there are certain individuals who join for ideological reasons, supporting the Russian Federation.
But there are very few of them.
As for those foreigners who are already in Russia, they are blackmailed and intimidated. Usually these are so-called labor migrants, who are mostly from Asia.
First, they start putting pressure on the person. If they are in Russia, saying that you have violated some conditions of your stay in Russia, that they will put you in prison, deport you, or ban you from entering Russia. But you can fix this if you sign a contract with the Ministry of Defense. Plus, we'll even give you extra money on top of that.
By the beginning of 2025, we know by name at least 101 Syrians, 101 Serbs, 170 Turkmens, 1,028 Cubans, and 1,110 Uzbeks who are fighting on Russia's side. But how many mercenaries are still fighting in Russia's war against Ukraine remains unknown. Vlad Velichko, We Are Ukraine, Marathon, United News.
The Russians became overconfident and got a powerful slap from the Ukrainian armed forces. Sappers cut off the enemy's air supply and stopped enemy assaults near Pokrovsk, a fierce rout of the enemy live on air. Mines and decoys become a real trap for the suicide soldiers. Our guys acted with lightning speed. More about the work of the warriors who prepare surprises for the Russians and then vanish like a shadow in our report right now.
You see, we found some drones. This isn't the first time. There are a lot of them. We take from them everything we need. Spare parts, their designs, we study them and use them.
And it will work for us.
Of course, naturally.
Kevin is the youngest Wolverine in the 68th Jaeger Brigade. He is 18 and works as a sapper scout. He says he's proud to carry out missions in places where others don't dare to go.
Right now, we're keeping things moving here.
Kevin is turning the area into an impregnable fortress to make it harder for the enemy to advance and to reliably protect our positions.
My first mission was to set up non-explosive barriers so that in the future we could save the lives of our guys. Non-explosive barriers stop both infantry, mantles and vehicles. This can include barbed wire and entanglements.
The Pokrovsk direction, which the Rangers are defending, remains one of the most difficult areas on the front. The Russian occupiers are trying to break through into the Dnipropetrovsk-Nosar region and are pushing to gain control over the Pokrovsk-Mirnograd-Kostiantynivka highway. Here's what the soldiers of the 68th Brigade have to say.
Pokrovsk. May 13th, we are conducting reconnaissance. Well, how should I put it, the situation? The so-called truce that everyone was talking about. There is no truce at all. Let me show you something. The entire sector, there's nothing left intact. Not a single thing. That's the situation, gentlemen. The war goes on.
Combat engineers and scouts are clearing mines from the roads to allow our troops to advance, and they're also setting up booby traps to prevent the occupiers from moving forward.
When we worked during the day, it was still relatively safe. But when the mission required us to go out at night, we had to work as close as 700 meters from the enemy. Every night we went out on missions, setting up entanglements in the fields, and accordingly, for the vehicle to get there, it would stop 4 kilometers away from the work site. And then we would walk another 3 kilometers on foot. We carried all the materials by hand. We would leave for the whole night at 8 in the evening and return at 6 in the morning.
Sappers use a variety of engineering equipment and munitions to create mine explosive barriers that inflict significant losses on the occupiers.
So that the enemy can't just break through with a direct assault when they launch an attack. So they can't break through like that. We mine the field so that tanks can't get through. Similarly, all sorts of barriers are set up in front of the infantry.
More than once, while working, the Rangers came under both artillery and mortar fire.
There was a time when we came under artillery fire. It was close.
That was while you were working, right? And what were you doing at that moment?
Well, we were putting up all barbed wire barriers. Well, it wasn't a pleasant feeling, but the guy said we went through our baptism by fire.
In the Pokrovsk direction, Russian forces attack in small infantry groups, using ATVs, motorcycles, and even bicycles. The Motanka barriers set up by the sappers are a big help in stopping the occupiers.
It's practically invisible. And when they're driving at a speed of even 30 or 40 kilometers per hour, well, he hit the wire entanglement and that was it. The motorcycle stayed right there.
This barely noticeable iron entanglement stops enemy vehicles, especially by tangling up their mine rollers.
The entanglement itself weighs 25 kilograms. You need to, well, in one night, it also depends. If nothing is flying overhead, then you can set up about 25 of them. And all of this has to be carried by hand as well. Well, it's not easy work.
So that our troops can advance and the enemy has no chance to get through, the sappers are out there every day on the front lines. They say they'll do everything possible to protect their own and prevent the enemy from advancing.
If we start giving up now, territory like this, the enemy will just realize that we can be pushed and they'll think, let's press a little harder, and they'll give it up themselves. And that's exactly what we can't allow to happen.
From Donetsk region, Marina Smolova, Alexander Petrovsky, we, Ukraine, United News.
Silent, invisible, relentless, fury. When this bird takes to the sky, somewhere on the enemy's positions, it suddenly becomes hellishly hot. One flight and the enemy artillery disappears. While the occupiers are trying to figure out where it came from, our guys are already underground preparing the next batch of greetings. What this drone is capable of and how exactly it helps turn the Ukrainian sky into a field of justice. Find out more in the following report.
Final preparations.
I'm packing the parachute so we can land the plane when it returns. We attach the rubber band to the plane, stretch it across the field by hand, saw, and then release it.
Narrator. And the Furia takes off into the sky.
Almas, there's really nothing too difficult about this. You just need a bit of strength in your hands and aim, and to know which way the wind is blowing.
Pilot. It's a very effective bird, designed specifically for the military. It's easy to use, and that's what makes it so well suited for carrying out combat missions.
Narrator, the Furia crew has 4 members, a driver and 3 drone operators. The guys have been working since morning.
Pilot. Today, 2 cannons were also damaged. D-30 and D-20 cannons. They target both civilians and the military, so their shells hit both.
Almaz, the orcs were just pulling out and replacing the cannons, and that's when we caught them and started working on them. And then neighboring units joined in and everything started flying there. Shells, FPV drones, and more.
Narrator, and during the TSN visit, following the pilot's guidance, the artillery of the 44th Brigade destroyed several more Russian cannons. The crew works underground so that enemy drones can't spot them. Within just a few square meters, they have their workspace, a small kitchen, a wash basin, and beds.
Pilot. We have a driver over there, Volodymyr. So when it comes to all these living arrangements, that's 90% thanks to him. He made the little kitchen, the shelves, all these things to make life easier. And even those paintings are his work too.
Narrator, the guys have been working together for half a year already, says the soldier with the call sign Almaz. The 24-year-old has already spent 6 years in the military. Basto. Before the full-scale invasion, he played drums in a military orchestra.
Almaz, I'm a drummer without a formal music education. I served as a musician for 2 years, and then I transferred to a combat unit. My dad was also mobilized, and my brother is fighting as well.
Narrator, the soldiers say the work is interesting, especially when they see Russian equipment go up in flames.
Mikhailo, when we destroyed a Ural truck loaded with a full set of ammunition and a cannon, it was like a real fireworks show. Absolutely amazing. It was so bright, it even blinded the camera.
Narrator, the soldiers say that their Furia drone alone has completed more than 200 successful flights. A lot depends on the weather conditions, and that's where the Maestro comes in handy. He used to serve in a meteorological battery.
Mikhailo, right now in the summer, cold and hot air currents also have a strong impact. If there are hot currents, the drone might dip or rise up. There's nothing we can do about that. The drone itself will either climb or descend toward the ground.
Narrator, with the Furia, the pilots track every move the occupiers make. They say that even though they're tired, they have to stay here until the end. Above all, it's for the sake of their families waiting for them. Kira Ova, Andrei Kopovka, Zaporizhzhia, TSN 1+1 Marathon, United News.
Darina, that's all from me for now. This was me, Darina Hutsakalo. Even more intense news from the front in our next broadcast. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. See you soon.